Chapter 2. Joseph Smith. Joseph the Prophet. Ancient Prophets. Book of Mormon. Joseph, the Prophet. Joseph had a high lip, and he was a beautiful man, one of the most lovely men I ever saw, especially when the Spirit of God was in him, and his countenance was as white as the whitest thing you ever saw. 635. Joseph Smith was a prophet of the living God, for the Lord Almighty revealed it to me more than 28 years ago, and I have never had a doubt upon my mind of the truth of my religion from that day to this. That man was sent to set up this kingdom, to organize it, and to give you a law, not for his benefit only, but for yours, and God spake through him. A 274. We are the servants of God. We have been called of God through the ministry of that holy prophet Joseph Smith, who received his authority through the ministry of holy angels. Now he was just as true a prophet as Moses was, or as any prophet that has ever been upon the earth, and we are just as much the authorized servants of God, as the apostles and disciples in the days of Jesus Christ were, and I know it. And I bear testimony of it to the United States, and to the nations of the world. 106. We are certainly blessed above all other people on the earth, although there are but a few that realize it as they ought to, but such as have been driven from their homes, and stripped of all they possess from 2 to 6 times, as I have, they can appreciate the blessings of peace and prosperity that attend the saints in these valleys. I have seen the latter-day saints scattered by the ruthless hand of mobocracy to the four winds, driven from Missouri and from Illinois by their enemies in the dead of winter, and exposed to the severity of the season. For what? All because they believed in God and acknowledged Joseph Smith to be his prophet. 236. There are quite a number of this congregation who knew Joseph Smith the prophet, and he used to say in Nauvoo that when he came before the people he felt as though he were enclosed in an iron case. His mind was closed by the influences that were thrown around him. He was curtailed in his wishes and desires to do good. There was no room for him to expand. Hence he could not make use of the revelations of God as he would have done. There was no room in the hearts of the people to receive the glorious truths of the gospel that God revealed to him. 234. To refer again to what I know, what I have seen and experienced in my travels and my associations with the prophet of the living God, I will remark that you have here with you a few of us that have traveled with him from the beginning, and we know his trials and sufferings. And we know that the greatest torment he had and the greatest mental suffering was because this people would not live up to their privileges. There were many things he desired to reveal that we have not learned yet, but he could not do it. He said sometimes that he felt pressed upon and as though he were pent up in an acorn shell, and all because the people did not and would not prepare themselves to receive the rich treasures of wisdom and knowledge that he had to impart. He could have revealed a great many things that we could not receive, because we lacked that diligence and faithfulness that were necessary to entitle us to those choice things of the kingdom. He revealed the doctrine of celestial marriage, and the abuse of this holy principle caused many to stumble and fall away from the church of the living God, but that was their own fault, and they have nobody else to blame. 167. I never knew an instance in the days of Joseph, when he confided in those poor devils, but what they turned traitor to him, and were the very men that took his life, aided by the apostates that left this church, and I know it, and so do you. Joseph never trusted in one of them but what they betrayed him, and I wish to God I had taken some of their lives when I had a chance. They were blacklegs, whoremongers, murderers, liars, sorcerers, and rascals, and you may take many of the leading men of the United States government, and they are not one whit better. 178. I have seen a day when it was as much as our lives were worth to sustain Joseph Smith. The apostates were so thick around us, and persecution was so great. 664. That was the trouble with Emma Smith. Joseph stood for the truth and maintained it. She struck against it. And where is she? She is where she is, and she will not escape until Joseph Smith opens the door and lets her out. She declared that she would leave him, if he would not sustain her, instead of sustaining Brother Brigham, and Heber, and the rest of the 12 apostles of God. That is as true as that the sun shines. She had her choice, but Joseph would not follow her. 529. Joseph Smith could tell the plans that were laid for his destruction, many times when he could not prove it by any natural means. 942. Joseph would many times ostensibly hold men up to see whether this people would worship them, to see whether they had discernment enough to know the difference between a righteous man and a wicked one, and if we preferred the society of a blackleg, or of a whoremaster, or of any other abominable character, he was perfectly willing that we should have the opportunity to prove ourselves. 124. The ungodly killed Joseph and Hiram, but in so doing they furthered the work of God more than tenfold. Joseph laid the foundation, and left us to build the building, and when we are gone we will leave others, for it must be done. 357. When Jesus lived on the earth, he ordained and organized a quorum of 12 apostles, and said to them, I have laid the foundation, and you must build the house. Joseph Smith did the same. He made choice of 12 apostles, and ordained them, and said, I have laid the foundation, and you may build upon it, you may rear the house, and these very persons are the ones who will lead you through into the celestial world, and they will be at your head all the time. It will be a very good thing if you take care of these men and nourish and cherish them, that when you get into difficulty, into snarly hard knots that you do not know how to untie, they may be on hand to render you assistance. 320. He Joseph Smith has passed behind the veil, but there never will a person in this dispensation enter into the celestial glory without his approbation. 119. Ancient Prophets. You believe that Joseph was a prophet, but many could not believe even this when he was alive, but now that he is dead they can believe it. Jesus was a prophet, though few believed so when he was upon the earth, but when he left them, nearly all could believe his divine mission. This has always been the case in regard to all the prophets, for the sons of those who killed the prophets living in their day, adorned the sepulchres of those whom their fathers had put to death, and crucified the Son of God. 357. Now, I will refer to Brother Brigham, Brother Heber, Brother Joseph Smith, Oliver Cowdery, Bishop N.K. Whitney, and lots of other men. Brother Joseph actually saw those men in vision. He saw us in a day when we were all together. We have been separated by marriage and thrown apart, but he saw the day when we all came out of one stock, and that was out of the aristocracy. Yes, we came directly down to the prophets, and not only us, but lots of others, the whole Smith race. I could remember probably 20 or 30 that Joseph mentioned came down through that channel. There is another thing that Brother Joseph said, viz. that we were positively heirs of the priesthood, for he had seen us as such in his vision. Yes, just as much so as my children are that have been born since I received my endowment. Our fathers were heirs to that priesthood, which was handed down from father to son, and we came through that lineage. 216. I know that Joseph, Hiram, Willard, and Jedediah, and all other good men who have died in the faith, live and associate with those who held the priesthood before they did. And they are with Brother Brigham and with us, and will be with us forever, for we never will be separated, and I know it. I know that, Brother Brigham, just as well as I know that I see this people today, and I shall be with you, and we will have a happy time when we meet Joseph and Hiram and Willard and Jedediah and Father Smith. Will not the old gentleman be jolly? Yes, for he always was, and he will be more so in proportion to the greater light and knowledge he has. Those are the men we are going to meet with, also with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, 3 of the old polygamists. You suppose that Joseph and Hiram and all those good men would associate with those ancient worthies, if they had not been engaged in the same practices. They had to do the works of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In order to be admitted where they are, they had to be polygamists, in order to be received into their society. God knows that I am not ashamed of those good men now, and how much more I shall prize my associate polygamists, when I am further advanced in knowledge, I do not know. I am talking in earnest, and from the experience I have had. 224. To return to the subject of the garments of the holy priesthood, I will say that the one which Jesus had on when he appeared to the prophet Joseph was neat and clean, and Peter had on the same kind, and he also had a key in his hand. John also came and administered unto Joseph Smith, and remember that Peter, James, and John hold the keys pertaining to their dispensation and pertaining to this, and they came and conferred their priesthood and authority upon Joseph the seer, which is for the gathering together of all who seek the way of life. 376. You need not ask who administered to Brother Brigham, for I will tell you. There Moses and Aaron, Elijah, Jesus, Peter, James, and John, Brother Joseph, Michael the archangel, and the hosts of the righteous behind the veil. They are all engaged in this great work. 205. God Almighty bless you, brethren and sisters. And I bless you, and I bless the air, the earth, the mountains, and everything that is in these regions. I bless the elements in these mountains, and my prayer is that the fathers of these Lamanites, the old prophets and old patriarchs, will visit them by night and by day, and they will do it when the proper time comes, and they will visit this people when they are worthy and when it is necessary. God Almighty will rouse every tribe and every nation that exists in the east, west, north, and south, and they will be on hand for our relief. 278. Book of Mormon. 30 years ago the whole church was under condemnation because they had neglected the new and everlasting covenant, even the Book of Mormon and other revelations God had given to them, and they were driven by their enemies, for they were under condemnation at that early day of our history. How's it with us now? There are scores of this people who never look at those books. The Book of Mormon is the ensign which God has lifted up to the nations in the last days, and we are not justified when we in our feelings neglect or forsake it. I take much comfort in reading those books which the Lord has given us through Joseph Smith. The Book of Mormon was written by the Spirit and power of God, the man 11-147. How does it compare with the vision that Joseph and others had, when they went into a cave in the hill Cumorah, and saw more records than 10 men could carry? There were books piled up on tables, book upon book. Those records this people will yet have, if they accepted the Book of Mormon and observe its precepts, and keep the commandments. 105. You know that the world has made a great deal of fuss, and told many lies about the devil pitching on to Joseph Smith when he went to get the place, but they will get to a place where the devils will handle them worse than they did Joseph when he got the place. If they do not embrace the gospel, it will be so. 230.